Hi, I'm Audrey Wenning, Director of Transportation at the Metropolitan Planning Council. Welcome to everyone who's joining us today. We'll just give it a few moments as people come into the room and we'll get started. Welcome everyone as you're coming into the room. We'll get started in just a moment. Welcome and good morning, everyone. I'm Audrey Wenning, Director of Transportation at the Metropolitan Planning Council. And on behalf of MPC, the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, and the City of Chicago, I'd like to welcome you to today's Global Voices Local Action event, the sixth event of a 7-part series focusing on the We Will citywide Chicago plan. These events have occurred each month throughout November. Please be sure to register for upcoming events, and we will drop that link into the chat. Today's event is focused on the transportation and infrastructure pillar, and we will hear from panelists and a moderator about We Will Chicago, the goals and objectives in the plan related to transportation and infrastructure. Panelists will provide presentations about initiatives in Chicago and the city of Barcelona, Spain, and engage in a short moderated discussion. Then we will ask participants to provide input on some key recommendations via an online polling tool. So that we can all engage easily in today's panel, here are a few housekeeping points. We have enabled the Q&A function here on Zoom. You can find it in the bottom portion of your screen. We ask that you use the Q&A function to post any questions so that we can easily access them. This event also features live closed captioning in English and Spanish. So please click closed captions here in Zoom to turn the English or Spanish captions on and off. Para acceso a los subtítulos en español, por favor, haz clic CC aquí en el Zoom y debes elegir el idioma español. We'd also like everyone to know that this event is being recorded. We will share a link to the recording and any relevant resources in a follow-up email, so keep an eye out for that. We have a pretty tight agenda, so we may not get to your questions as part of the Q&A, but after the event, we will send out answers to all questions that we receive as part of the event follow-up. Today's event, we will feature one presenter, 2 panelists, and a moderator. You can find out more information about each speaker online, and we will share a link in just a moment. Each speaker will be introduced before they begin their remarks and presentation. To get us started, I'd like to introduce Melvin Thompson, Executive Director of the Endaleo Institute. Melvin Thompson is the Executive Director of the Community Development Arm of Trinity United Church of Christ on the far south side of Chicago. Melvin is charged with the successful integration of 3 former Trinity nonprofit corporations in health, education, and community development. Under his leadership, Endaleo addresses a pressing need to advance the state of comprehensive community development with deeper effectiveness, due largely to its evolution beyond single-issue, project-based strategies that fail to address the complex mix of challenges African Americans face. As such, Mr. Thompson is committed to community-based participatory research, a process that positions Endaleo as a community liaison between academic research institutions and residents of Washington Heights. With a mission to revitalize the 95th Street corridor, Melvin has strategically combined health and community development to build a more sustainable, health-conscious, and vibrant neighborhood, leveraging a signature transit station as the nexus for economic development. Melvin will be the moderator for today's panel and will also provide some welcoming remarks. So now let's hear from Melvin.
Thanks so much, Audrey, and thanks to all of you participating in the discussion online. Despite being considered one of the most well-connected cities in the country and a global transportation hub, our city still has many gaps in services that impact the people who live, work, and visit here. Some of the gaps include public transit services, neighborhood walkability, protected bike lanes, and broadband access. While these challenges occur across the city, we must collectively acknowledge and center both the experience and the voice of the communities that are typically left most disconnected by our transportation and infrastructure systems. In order to address some of these gaps, the transportation and infrastructure goals are focused on improving the condition of Chicago's existing systems while enhancing their access and benefits to all city residents and workers. The goals and objectives of the We Will Chicago Transportation and Infrastructure Pillar take into consideration the myriad connectivity challenges that Chicago residents face. They include a focus on universal accessibility, as well as equitable distribution and affordability of transportation. The plan seeks to bolster active transportation infrastructure throughout the city to drive sustainability and climate resilience. A major focus is also the prioritization of investments in formerly disconnected communities to overcome decades-long patterns that have directly harmed certain neighborhoods and negatively impacted the entire region. Today, we all come together with a shared interest in creating access and connections through safe and reliable physical infrastructure and transportation networks. We are eager to learn more about the transportation elements of the We Will plan and how that will be implemented in Chicago. We are also excited to learn from Barcelona and be inspired about what's possible for improving livability through transportation improvements in large cities. On behalf of the Andaleo Institute, thank you for being here today. We are honored to help host this event to engage in discussion about local and international models and to provide a space for public feedback on the draft plan. Now, I'd like to introduce Juan Sebastian Arias, who will give us an overview of We Will Chicago and the lifelong learning goals and objectives. Juan Sebastian Arias works for the Office of Chicago Mayor Lori E. Lightfoot as a Deputy Director of Policy. There he manages strategic policy and place-based initiatives across housing, neighborhood development, and food security, from equitable transit-oriented developments to vacant lots to fair housing. He has over 12 years of experience working to advance racial equity and social justice in cities through policy, research, community engagement, and cross-sector partnerships. Juan?
Thank you, Melvin, and thanks for starting off with a broad overview of the transportation infrastructure pillar as well. But to everyone, again, thank you for joining us today. I'm just going to speak for a few minutes, providing an overview on We Will Chicago, the city's first citywide plan in many years. So if we go to the next slide, you all might, since you're joining this panel, you may be a little familiar with We Will Chicago. The larger goal behind the citywide plan is to define and come to a collective vision for how, and a community-driven vision for how we want Chicago to grow more equitably and resiliently over the coming decade. If we go to the next slide, I can share just a little bit more about the framework guiding the plan. So to start, We Will Chicago has these two guiding principles. You can think of them as the North Stars of what we're trying to get to with the citywide plan. And those include equity and resiliency. Equity defined as providing people and groups the resources and access to resources that they need in order to thrive. And resiliency defined as the ability of an individual, a city, a group to thrive despite any stresses, obstacles, or setbacks, from climate change to public health crises like the pandemic that we have been living through. Also a part of the We Will Chicago framework were these five themes of how we wanted to conduct the process. And you may not be able to see them clearly. There are the gray bars on the right side of the slide, but these include historical reckoning and trust building. So acknowledging the past of systemic injustices that have caused and exacerbated the inequities we see today in the city. They also include deep and meaningful and authentic community engagement, an evaluation of equity impacts, accountability, and interagency and cross-sector collaboration. Now, if we go to the next slide, the next layer down are the 8 pillars within the citywide plan, which you can think of as the chapters, and there are actually literally the chapters in the draft plan right now. So We Will Chicago focuses on these 8 different pillars. They range from housing and neighborhoods to lifelong learning to transportation and infrastructure, which is the focus of today's session. And they also include the 8th pillar, civic and community engagement, which is actually one that we added that was not identified at the beginning of the process, but early on or halfway through the research team's work. We added this as a priority pillar, given that it was a theme around community engagement that was coming up in all of the other pillars. And so we recognized that it was important and critical enough to have dedicated recommendations, dedicated goals and objectives too. So as I said, we have the two principles, 5 themes, and then the 8 pillars. And then the next question we often hear is, so what does a city plan, a citywide plan actually do? And so by collectively defining these goals and this vision for the city, what we can do as the city of Chicago with this plan is what you see on the slide here, right? So beginning to align annual budgets around these goals and objectives, use the goals and objectives within the plan to shape and inform major projects, new policies. I think we're going to hear some examples later on too. But it also helps us establish standards for neighborhood plans, standards for public decision-making, and more. So if we go to the next slide, thank you. So where we currently are in the timeline, this work actually began back in 2020, so it's been over 2 years. And in 2020, the first phase was hosting a series of community conversations to help us define the 2 principles, the 5 themes, and then the pillars that I just went over. The second phase began in earnest in 2021 and through the first half of this year, which was the research phase and the development of the draft plan that is up right now for public comment. And I'll just note that the way that we conducted the process, we had an open application for any Chicago resident to join, to be a member of one of the research teams or an advisory committee. And in the end, I believe we had over 150 volunteers come through that process. And we also had 25 funded community partners who were funded to both participate in those research team, in the research team meetings themselves, as well as to do some dedicated community engagement with their own communities as well. And then, of course, we had online surveys and hosted other community engagement events. Where we are now is in this third phase of a public comment process. And we actually are just under a week away from the end of our this public comment phase. So we published a draft of the We Will Chicago plan earlier this summer in July, and then have started doing a lot more engagement to get even broader feedback on the goals and the objectives in the plan. So on the next slide is just a zoomed in version of this, of where we are now. So we're almost at November. So as I just mentioned, we're in really the last 6 days or so of this public engagement phase. So if you have not yet filled out some of the surveys online, please do so. They're available at wewillchicago.com/surveys. Over the next coming months, We will be incorporating all the feedback we've gained through those surveys and also through some targeted focus groups. And we've also been doing some in-person survey collection throughout the summer as well. And we're going to put that all together to revise the draft framework plan and then present it to Chicago Plan Commission early next year for formal adoption and approval. So that is where we currently are. As I mentioned, we're in the last days of this summer of engagement, or now summer and a little into fall of engagement. Please do check out the survey and share it with your friends, your family, your network, your colleagues, to help us get even more eyes and awareness and feedback on the current goals and objectives. And I think with that, I'll transition now to say more about the transportation infrastructure goals. But this actually on the screen is a snapshot of what the plan the draft plan document actually looks like itself. As we mentioned, there are 8 pillars, over 40 goals, and over 150, I believe, objectives. And for each goal that is in the plan, we have supporting data that shows the analysis that we looked at around the issues or the challenges with that particular pillar, as well as some of the nesting objectives underneath the goal too. Great. So now just to quickly go over the transportation and infrastructure goals. So the first one is to ensure that the city's transportation networks and infrastructure systems are safe, equitable, and accessible for all. And so a couple of the example objectives under here include ensuring access to high quality broadband internet across the city and prioritizing infrastructure that reinforces the safe movement of all users, regardless of their mode, age, ability, or income. The second goal in this pillar is to create transportation networks that support greater connectivity by active and sustainable options. And that includes walking, public transit, biking, rolling in a wheelchair, and other methods that do not require a car ownership. And some of the sample objectives here include prioritizing public transit options that create connectivity across neighborhoods outside of downtown, and also prioritizing investments in infrastructure that facilitates walking, transit, and biking. The first 2 goals, by the way, are going to be the focus of the of some of the panel conversations too. So just want to give you a heads up on that too. The third goal we have is to balance the economic benefits of moving goods with the negative impacts on communities, eliminating and equitably distributing burdens. So some example objectives under here are to make freight corridors safe for all, and prioritizing the safety of people who walk, use transit, bike, and roll in a wheelchair, as well as reducing the disproportionate burdens on communities that are adjacent to industrial corridors and other intermodal facilities and airports too. The fourth goal is to prioritize investments in communities that have been historically harmed by inequities in past transportation and infrastructure decision-making. And one sample objective here is to support neighborhood and network scale transportation and infrastructure projects. And then the last goal, the 5th goal within this pillar 2, if we go to the next slide, is to leverage resources for transportation and infrastructure projects that promote environmental sustainability and resilience. And again, just a couple of the example objectives in here are to leverage transportation and infrastructure assets to manage the environmental impacts of flooding and stormwater runoff, as well as to reduce pollutants that are generated by transportation, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improve air quality. So with that, that concludes my portion of this overview of We Will Chicago. I'll just say one last plug that we're in the last 6 days or so. The surveys will be open until 11:59 p.m. on November 1st. And so appreciate any help you all can give in getting that out to more eyes and more people. Thank you. And Melvin, I think I'm passing it back to you.
Thank you, Juan Sebastian, for that introduction to Chicago's citywide plan and the lifelong learning goals and objectives. We will now hear from CDOT's Deputy Commissioner of Strategic Initiatives, Jamie Simone, who will share about the programs that CDOT has implemented that are aligned with We Will Chicago. Jamie Simone has been with the Chicago Department of Transportation since March 2020, serving as Deputy Commissioner for Strategic Initiatives. Her team includes the Director of Public Affairs, Director of Policy, and the newly created position of Director of Outreach and Engagement. She led the department's strategic plan process and is now working on an update document to share progress towards the plan's implementation. Prior to CDOT, Jamie worked in the private sector at Sam Schwartz Engineering and Farr Associates, as well as in the public and nonprofit sectors at the Illinois Department of Transportation, the Trust for Public Land, and the Wicker Park Bucktown Chamber of Commerce. Jamie is a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners, is a lead accredited professional, and is a member of Lambda Alpha. She previously served on the boards of the Illinois chapter of the American Planning Association and the Friends of the Bloomingdale Trail. Jamie holds a master's degree in urban planning and policy from the University of Illinois at Chicago and a bachelor's degree from the University of Iowa. Jamie?
Thanks, Melvin. And thanks for having me here today. So I wanted to follow up on the information that Juan Sebastian shared. You saw the timeline. When we first, as a department, learned about the city's intention to do We Will, a citywide plan, we were already in the process of creating a strategic plan for the department. And you'll see that although we were on different timelines, there's lots of alignment between these two documents. So a quick overview, our strategic plan took about a year for us to put together. We organized working groups within the department. We had focus groups with outside partners, sister agencies. We worked closely with the Transportation Equity Network. And in the end, we have a document with 4 main pillars, 21 goals distributed among those pillars, 84 strategies, hundreds of benchmarks that will get us to achieve the goals in the plan. Next slide shows the pillar that I'm going to focus on today from our strategic plan, access to opportunity. So within access to opportunity, there are these 5 goals related to biking, walking, taking transit, reducing congestion. Next slide. Today, I'm just going to focus on those first 3 goals, which you can see are most closely related to the second goal of the transportation and infrastructure pillar in the We Will Chicago plan that Juan Sebastian introduced. And just as a reminder, that goal is to create transportation networks that support greater connectivity by active and sustainable options, such as walking, public transit, biking, and other methods that do not require car ownership. And again, you can see that those are closely aligned with our first 3 goals in the access to opportunity pillar of the strategic plan. Next. So the first goal, make it safer and easier to walk in Chicago. In addition to our strategic plan, we also have Mayor Lightfoot's Chicago Works plan, which provides local funding to make transportation improvements. So we don't have to wait for federal and state money to come through. We can get started on making these improvements. So on the left, you can see we've done a lot of curb extensions, bump outs, pedestrian refuge islands to improve the pedestrian experience and pedestrian safety all throughout the city by reducing the conflict point between pedestrians and people driving, by reducing crossing distances. On the right-hand side, you can see an example of how this works when we work in partnership with community groups. This is in Rogers Park on Clark Street near some metro stations where there are colorful crosswalks that were designed by community partners. On the next slide, you can see another example. This is at State and Kinsey, another example of a pedestrian improvement. So on the left-hand side, you can see what the intersection looked like in 2019 and before that. It's a big intersection. It's kind of complicated the way State kind of, jogs a little bit there. It's a lot of distance for pedestrians to cross. During the pandemic, we took advantage of the lower traffic volumes at this intersection as well as many others in the downtown area to do some temporary paint and post improvements. You can see here that beigey yellow paint and the bollards, and where that gentleman is waiting to cross the street. It's a de facto shorter area for someone to cross the intersection. And then you can see the permanent condition if you go out there today. Again, this is State and Kinsey. Those temporary improvements have been made permanent with a poured concrete sidewalk and curb. And you can see the picture on the right versus the picture on the left. It's a much easier space to navigate and much safer for pedestrians to cross. On the next slide, I'll get into goal number 2, which again is partner with CTA to reduce commute times and improve the transit experience for all Chicagoans. So as you might imagine, we work a lot with CTA. This is an example from the Better Streets for Buses plan, which we're working on with them right now. The document is posted online. The public comment period just ended, but I clipped a couple pages out of the draft document to show the kind of stuff that we're doing together. So you can see the map on the left. The detail doesn't matter, but it illustrates that we've identified priority corridors for Better Streets for Buses, where we can do bus-friendly treatments to improve CTA service. So on the bottom left there, those red bars, you can see our potential bus lanes, where those might fit within the right-of-way. And on the right-hand side, you can see some of the bus stop or bus boarding location improvements that can be made to improve the bus riding experience. What treatments go where depend on the context, what kind of street is it, how wide is the street, those kind of things. On the next slide, you can see that also in the same document, we're looking at details on how to improve the actual bus stop and bus boarding experience. Is there bike parking nearby? Can we improve the crosswalks and the sidewalks that lead to a bus stop? What's the boarding experience like? Can we reduce the distance or the height between the sidewalk and where you get on the bus? Those are the kinds of things that we're working on with CTA on that second goal. The third goal on the next slide, again, the third goal from our access to opportunity portion of our strategic plan is make cycling a safe, affordable transportation option for more Chicagoans. So you can see we've made a lot of progress towards this goal too over the last year. These left two pictures show how we're upgrading protected lanes to be concrete protected lanes. This is Milwaukee Avenue. It sees the most bike traffic of any street in the city. And we're using these precast concrete curbs to more quickly upgrade those lanes to concrete barrier protected, and it's also less disruptive. On the right-hand side is another example of how we're approaching neighborhood scale bike infrastructure. So we're taking a step back from traditional bike planning that focuses on getting people, commuters downtown to work on their bikes, those spoke routes, and trying to get people where they want to go within their own neighborhoods. Much fewer people are working downtown, but even still, people want to be able to connect by bike within their neighborhood to places that are important: a friend's house, a grandparent's house, church, school, the store, picking up your kids after school, et cetera. So working with community organizations, we're able to identify those locations and then figure out what the neighborhood scale bike infrastructure is that we can put in place that helps make those connections easier and safer. This here is an example of some work that we did. I think this is Belmont Cragen. On the next slide, we've also expanded our micromobility options. So on the left is a map of the city showing that by the end of the year, Divvy, which has been around for quite a while now in the city, will expand by the end of the year to the entire city. So all of Chicago will be served by Divvy, and it will be the largest bike share program by geography in the country. We've also increased the types of micromobility that are available. So after 2 successful summer pilots with scooters, we now have permanent e-scooter programs provided by 3 companies, as well as the addition of scooters to Divvy stations in the downtown area. And lastly, I'd like to share information about Bike Chicago on the next slide. This is a program that we introduced in the spring with the goal of giving away 5,000 bikes to Chicagoans by 2026. It was an online application. There were certain criteria that you had to meet to be eligible for the program, but we received almost 20,000 applications in this first year, more than half of those within the first year. Within the first week of the application period being open, which I think blew away everyone's expectations for the kind of response we'd get to the program. And I thought another interesting aspect of the program, of those almost 20,000 people that applied, over 45% were over the age of 30, which I think flies in the face of what a lot of people assume the typical cyclist in Chicago is. So we're seeing that the trend is for people over the age of 30 to request these bikes. On the next slide is a map of the city showing where the top 10 neighborhood applications came in. So this is the 77 community areas shown here on the right-hand side. On the left, you can see the number of applications that came in from the top 10 areas. What I think is interesting is that the first and second, Austin and Belmont-Cragen, shown as number 1 and number 2 on the map, are places where we've done a lot of focused bicycle planning over the last couple of years. I showed that one picture of the lane being striped in the Belmont-Cragen neighborhood. And what this demonstrates to us is that when we work in communities and we do a process and we talk to people about their needs with respect to biking, it pays off. We see that those folks are interested in cycling and they want to do more cycling. So on this next slide, just a couple of snapshots from one of our recent bike giveaway events. You can see people are very excited to receive their free bike. We've heard from people that they plan to use their bike for a new job they got that requires bike deliveries. One woman came in and was really excited, said she felt like she just got a new car. Another gentleman was talking about how his kids have a bike and now he can enjoy cycling with them through the city. So it's been a really great program that we will continue until we've had the opportunity to give away all 5,000 bikes. That's it for me, and thanks for having me today.
Wow. Way cool, way cool. Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Simone, for sharing what CDOT has been working on and your plans for future implementation of the plan. Now we will hear from Javier Matilla Ayala, the Chief Architect of the City of Barcelona. Xavi Matilla is an architect, urban planner, graduated from ETSAV UPC, born in Terrassa, Barcelona in 1975. He has developed his professional career in different offices of recognized prestige in the field of urban planning, having won several awards and recognitions. He is an associate professor at the Department of Urbanism and Spatial Planning at the Universitat Politècnica de Catalunya, UPC, Barcelona Tech, and at the Master Metropoli in Metropolitan and Urban Studies, the Barcelona Institute of Regional and Metropolitan Studies. He is currently the Chief Architect of Barcelona City Council. Xavi will be telling us more about an innovative urban planning effort in Barcelona, Spain. Barcelona is located in the northwestern part of Spain in the region of Catalonia. It has approximately 1.7 million residents in the city limits and around 4.6 million inhabitants in the urban region. It is known for its art, architecture, and its relatively recent model of transportation planning, the Superblock. To tell us more about the planning, preparation, and implementation of Superblocks, please welcome Chief Architect of the City of Barcelona, Xavi Matilla Ayala. Xavi, take it away.
Thank you so much, Melvin. Thank you for your kind presentation, and good morning, everyone who are following the event online. For us, it's not only an honor to have the opportunity to share with you what are we working on right now in Barcelona City. We used to say that it's also a need that cities have the opportunity to share which are our challenges or efforts, because probably we are fighting in front of the same challenges right now, environmental ones, social ones. So we need to exchange and we need to learn from each other to improve our solutions. My brief presentation today will focus basically on what we are doing in public space through the idea of Superblock concept. But I think it's important to take into account that it's not only a problem of public space, what we are working right now in our cities, especially Barcelona. We are also working on public housing policies. We are working on how to improve our urban fabric in regarding environmental conditions, energetical conditions. But if we are talking about transportation, mobility, and public space, I think it's important just to share with you what that Superblock concept means right now. If we can go to next slide, please. Let me start introducing the city of Barcelona. In fact, Barcelona is not our city. We are talking about a municipality of only 100 square kilometers. The metropolitan area is 6 times bigger. We are 600 kilometers. But it's important to know that it is a really compact urban fabric city with a really high density urban fabric. Next slide, please. In fact, when we are talking nowadays about short distances cities, even 15-minute city, we usually say that Barcelona is already a short distances city. In fact, Barcelona has, from many years ago, a real polycentrical structure. We can see in this slide the picture above, which is the public markets map in Barcelona, and the picture above, the public libraries map. So these two kind of facilities can, I think, clearly show that we have a really good conditions, a really good distribution of that kind of public facility, that it makes that all the neighborhoods around the city have that condition of proximity to these most important facilities. So it's a really good condition. But if we go to the next slide, please, we have also problems with our public space. Barcelona, we have a really important lack of green areas. We have an average about of 6 square meters per inhabitant green areas, where it should be more than 10 if we look to the recommendations of WHO. So we have a very important challenge in how to transform this public space in order to improve environmental conditions. In red ones, we can identify which are the neighborhoods with the lower level of green areas. There are even neighborhoods with less than 2 square meters per inhabitant of green areas. So we have very important problems. You need to know that Barcelona is a city without large parks. We only have medium-sized parks in the city. So Barcelona is basically a city of streets. So if we want to improve the green condition, environmental condition, the social condition, we need to improve our public space. And it's also important to know that most of this public space in Barcelona is currently occupied by cars. Cars occupy right now more than the 50% of the surface in public space. So these two bad conditions basically show what we need to do. We need to transform our streets, and we need to introduce a new mobility network model to be more efficient. That it means to occupy less room in public space and also generate less pollution. If we go to the next slide, please, we can see which are our current problems. On the left picture, we can see that crossing every day in the center of the city, there are more cars. We are talking about 350,000 cars crossing every day the city by the itself center of the city. It means that there are more cars crossing the city by its center than the cars that are crossing the city by the ring roads and the north side and the south side. Obviously, we can see in the picture on the right, really poor environmental conditions in this central area. We go to the next slide, please. So which are the principles from we are working all the public space transformation projects right now? The first one, we need to introduce nature in the cities, in public space specifically. It means not only to increase green conditions, it means first to reduce pollution. So it would be absurd just to trying to do a greenwashing processes if we are not able to reduce the air pollution. So improve environmental conditions. The second one, we need to improve, it's possible, that kind of proximity conditions, introducing new perspective. We are working really hard introducing a gender perspective in our public space, introducing some different needs for those handicap profiles in our city. And third one, and it's really important for us, it's not only essential what are we doing, but how are we doing that kind of transformations. And here is when it appears the collaboration culture in order to work all together with the different communities, which are the strategies, which are the different solutions. Next slide, please. And probably the program that better explain these three main principles is Superblock. The idea of Superblock is real simple, but we think that really powerful also. The idea is how can we reach a new mobility model, more efficient, as I said before. It means that prioritizing public transport, prioritizing cycling, prioritizing pedestrian areas in order to free up some of the streets of the city to give it to increase green areas, to social activities. These three pictures show which is the change between the current Well, in some neighborhoods, a former situation where all the streets had the same role. And the idea that if we are able to promote public transport cycling, we will be able to occupy less room with mobility in our cities. So we will be able to free up some of these streets to improve the environmental conditions. So next slide, please. The first idea is that Superblock is not about improve small size areas or isolated areas in the city. It's idea on how to introduce a systemical transformation, a systemical improvement all around the city, just changing the mobility system, changing the priorities in which what kind of transport are occupying or are taking priority in this public space. Next slide, please. So the idea is that we are not only transforming one kind of streets, we are transforming all the streets all around the city. Those who are main streets, if we talk about mobility, that are being transformed in order to reduce asphalt occupied by cars, right now reducing the different lanes, introducing new public transport lanes, introducing new bike lanes, increasing the pavements for pedestrians. We are also improving a second level category, we call local streets. These ones are being reduced, the different car lanes, introducing some different services lanes in order to guarantee the urban goods distributions, urban services. And finally, we have, which are probably most well-known in different projects, new green streets are those that can be absolutely free up from mobility in order to be transformed in a priority for pedestrians area. So there are also different, we can see on the right column, different speed limits for different category of streets. If we want to go to the next slide, please. So the first project that was set up in the city through the idea of Superblock was the public transport network, the bus transport network. It comes from a kind of organic different distribution around the different neighborhoods. And there 10 years ago, more or less, was defined an orthogonal system that reach a more efficient system, just reducing the cars, the street, sorry, where the different buses are passing through every day. So the first idea is that the public transport is who define which are the basic streets, the main streets of the city for mobility. Next slide, please. And regarding this idea of how can we transform main avenues, main streets in the city, I would like to show you one of the projects that it's undergoing right now. This is Meridiana Avenue, is one of the main axes of the city of Barcelona, connecting the center area with the northern side of the territory. Meridiana used to be a kind of highway crossing the city. We can go to the next slide. I think we will be able to say we have on the left, it's not the first section of the city. There used to be more than 4 lines for each direction. But the idea right now is how can we shift from the section on the left side to the right one, just with a really basic strategy that is reducing the asphalt, reducing the car lanes. We are reducing one car lane for each direction, giving this space to public transport and giving this space to new urban greenery. They're appearing to new tree lines all along the street. And there is also appearing a new metropolitan bike lane. If we go to the next slide, I think we could share, this is the former situation of one of these crossing areas of Meridian Avenue. If we go to the next slide, we will see a picture. It was taken, I think it was 2 months ago, more or less, when we finished this stretch of the transformation. You can see that there has appeared this new trail double line in the center of the asphalt, the new metropolitan bike lane. Okay, we can go to the next, please. And some pictures just on the ground, just to see that the kind of transformation is also allowing us to increase different public space areas there are some playable areas for kids in these new spaces that we have recovered from asphalt, we could say. Next, please. And this is the vision of future of the idea of Superblock. I said before, this is not about to transform only some streets or transform only small areas in the city. The idea is how can we improve the whole city of Barcelona? How can we get that the whole city of Barcelona be a kind of super block, just to defining and working in this new, we could say, environmental and social infrastructure. So if we are able to reorganize mobility, we'll be able to define that kind of new green network. Then you can see with broader green lines, that kind of territorial, natural connections between mountain and coastline. But there is also appearing this new order of green axis, thanks to Superblock program, that will connect the different neighborhoods with a new kind of street, just improving environmental conditions and offering new public space for social activities. Next one, please. And there are some pictures from the first experience of the Superblock program that was set up between 2015, 2019 in the neighborhood of Sant Antoni. We can see, yes, I think the pictures show pretty well, which is the kind of transformation that we are working on. We are shifting from a typical double level street with pavement, asphalt, to only one platform for people, basically for biking, increasing the green area. And the next one, please. And then this is also important, how are we identifying the figures that can that allow us to check and also to demonstrate that we are reaching the different goals. So all the figures that we have from the monitoring protocol that we have in the different projects of Superblock are showing that we are improving not only the environmental conditions, we are also promoting social activities and that kind of neighborhood. We are also reducing the use of the cars in the whole area, not only in the streets that we are transformation. So it's real that there is a evaporation process of mobility by private car. Next one, please. And this is our goal for the next 10 years. This is the vision for 2030 in this central area that we saw before, that suffer every day more than 300,000 cars every day. We have identified will be the 21 new green streets in the central area of the city of Barcelona. It means one of each 3 streets will be transformed the next years. In fact, we are working right now in the first stage of this transformation. And it will mean that we are creating a new green system all around the 5 neighborhoods that come from this district of the city, yes, approaching the distance between green areas and the different housing and we're also increasing the average of green areas all around the different neighborhoods. Next one, please. And beyond this systemical approach, strategical systemical approach of Superblock, there is also another idea of the street, which is the street that we will need if we want to introduce these new environmental conditions. And this is important because this section allowed us to explain that the street is a 3-dimension space. It's not a surface and 2 facades. It's very important to understand that if we want to improve the green conditions, the tree conditions in the city, we need to also regenerate what is happening in the subsoil, in the underground, just giving new conditions to improve the quality of the green areas and also to improve the resilience conditions in the city, introducing new mechanisms in the water cycle management, among others. The second one is that kind of transformation is not only for a street, it's also focused in how can it improve also the activity in the ground floors of the building. So for us, it's really important to understand that the improvement in public space is also an improvement in what is happening in these collective activities, retail or commercial activities in ground floor. So I think these are a really good characteristic of what it's known as model of Barcelona, that is it the relation between the public realm and the private realm, the good relation between both of them, yes, creating a really good relations, not only functional, also visual, understanding that they must be really well connected. We are trying to introduce new in design innovation in this new stage. We are also working with different companies, yes, to try to identify new materials, new conditions of these materials, new solutions that allow us to to increase the capacity of the city to be more resilient in front of the climate change impacts. We have a really important problem already now in Barcelona with the temperatures. We are finishing the month of October, and we are in t-shirt with more than 25 degrees right now. So we need to change the idea of the materials in public space if we want to be more resilient of that kind of changes. This is also about, this is the fourth principle of the new street, to introduce conditions of landscape and heritage. We have a lot of architecture, really good architecture, with historical values that must be integrated in this process. And finally, it's absolutely essential to guarantee a good accessibility for urban services, emergency services, good urban good distributions, and so on and so on. We can go to the next slide. I think there are, first, it's really important if we want this new green streets network be really a pedestrian area, we need to reduce the amount of cars that cross these streets every day. The mechanism that we are using is to obligate cars to turn around on the left, on the right, on every crossing area. So we are trying to identify that these are no streets to passing through. So there are only streets to reach your home or to reach your commercial activity, but you are not allowed to go ahead all along the street in order to reduce the use basically of cars in these streets. Next slide, please. We are finishing, and there are some pictures showing which are the changes that we are expecting to reach. This is one of these streets that is under transformation right now, that we also take advantage of the lockdown situation and pandemic restrictions to reduce the different lanes of different streets with some tactical actions. But if we go to the next slide, we will see which is the transformation that will be real at the beginning of the next year. You can see it's a platform going from between the different facades, increasing the permeable surface in this pavement, increasing the number of streets. The trees are really will be the essential element in the future of cities, giving shadow, permitting, reducing temperature, giving psychological quality, perception, and so on. Next slide. And there are very specific areas, what is happening in the crossing areas between these green axes. So we find that kind of asphalt area that is about 2,000 square meters. So we could consider that it's a kind of square, a neighborhood square. So we are also transforming these areas, if we go to the next slide, into new public spaces. There are two different types of new public spaces. One is this that we can see right now. It's a kind of a small garden or small forest in this crossing area, just removing the asphalt, introducing permeable surfaces, increasing the number of trees. So just converting this area in a new environmental good quality public space. If we go to the next one. And how are we doing? How is possible to set up that kind of transformation? This is a picture of the first project of Superblock program in 2016 in the first Superblock area in Poblenou, one of the neighborhoods of the city. And this is a picture of one of these participatory spaces that was organized from the very beginning. It's really important to, I cannot explain longer, but basically the idea is that when we start a project of Superblock in one neighborhood, the first thing that we make is to create a promotional group. This promotional group integrates the different associations of individual people that are interested in the project. And this is the group who manage all the processes and is in charge to create what we call action plan. This is the plan who defines what will be the strategies and the different projects that will be developed during the next year. So that kind of process, just starting with a promotional group from the very beginning, allow us to be absolutely transparent with all the information, to be really close to everyone, to be able to exchange which are the different worries that people have, or just sharing whatever we need to share with people. We want to the next one. And we use a really useful tool. This is the digital platform, the digital open source platform, Decidim, that Barcelona City Council used from many years ago. This is a platform that the City Council used for all the different participatory processes that are existing right now in the city. For instance, we are also manage the participatory budget process every year, but also the different public space projects have their own space in the CDM, where you can find all the documents. You can follow all the history of the different projects with all the information, and you can also participate in different forums that are created for every project. Go to the next one. And let me finish, and there are only, I think, 2 or 3 more slides with one of our more special programs in mobility and public space transformation in Barcelona. This is Let's Protect the Schools. The idea is that we have in Barcelona more or less 600 schools. The schools in the city are a really very well distributed facility. So they basically can be seen like a acupuncture map with different hotspots when we can act and not only improve the specific spot, but also improve a greater area surrounding. So the idea with the schools was the same. Let's to protect the surrounding area, the public space surrounding the different schools in the city with different types of projects. We can see right now one that transformed the former street on the left into a school street that we call right now, where the cars are absolutely removed from the space, and with a tactical intervention, we're introducing new furniture. So we are open the space for families, for kids to use it every day. The next one, we can see different examples of different types of projects of Let's Protect Schools. If you go to the next slide, it allows us to increase the pavement area in front of the door. The school idea is how can we create a new public square in front of every school door with different mechanisms. We are also reducing the speed limit in front of the school. We are reducing the car lanes in front of the schools. And this is a really interesting program because if it's true that in different actions where we are reducing car lanes, there are some complaints, some fights with different lobbies in the city. When you are improving, when you are reducing car lanes in front of one school, there is no complaining from no one. See, everybody understands that we need to improve the conditions of our schools, that it means we need to improve the environmental and the health conditions of our children. So this is a really powerful, a useful strategy to act in front of the schools because everybody understands that it's absolutely needed. And I think that is the last slide, if I'm right. So we can go to the next. And that's all. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Javi, for discussing this innovative and very ambitious model with us. I'm now going to ask the panelists to all come on camera and join me in discussion. Any of you can answer these, so please jump in when you are ready to respond. But Xavi, I want to start with you. What an amazing presentation. I wanted to ask you kind of a two-part question. How has Barcelona cultivated political will and the public support to implement such innovative urban approaches to transportation and infrastructure? And then how has the public shaped the superblocks and all the approaches that you've mentioned in your presentation?
Yes, I would say despite there is a great agreement, I would say that we need to act, to adapt the city to the new climate conditions, to improve social conditions. I think it's absolutely essential that in Barcelona, there is a local government absolutely convinced that we need to do that, and that we not only need to plan what to do in the future, but what we need to do right now. So it's really important. I think a really experience with our mayor, Ada Colau, that when she asked us to improve precisely the schools, the surrounding schools of the city, the idea was that she didn't want to planify what to do in the next 4 years. She wanted to improve in a short period of time all the schools of the city. So I think it's really important, not only the political will that there is, but also the convincement that we need to act. It's not time to Of course, the idea is we need a strategy with a vision of the future, but we need to act right now if we want to change of the conditions. So this is really important. In Barcelona right now, there is a really strong political will coming from the leadership of Mayor Ada Colau, and I think it's absolutely important. And I would also say that coming from a mayor who is a woman, it's also really important. Ada Colau is the first woman who is the mayor responsibility in our city. And it's also, I think, important, it also take a really new perspective of what is happening and introducing that we need to improve our everyday conditions in our city. And there is probably that kind of top-down condition coming from the political will, but we also it's really important this bottom-up conditions. And I told before about the participatory process that we start on every project. That has been absolutely essential, changing some different opinions that at the beginning of Superblock program was really against the project, complaining everything. And we have shifted from a first period where there is a lot of people and different lobbies and community and stakeholders against the project, a new condition after 3 or 4 years, where in the last budget participatory process, there have been 4 different neighborhoods who are prioritized Superblock in their neighborhood. So the reality right now is that there are a lot of people asking us to get Superblocks in their neighborhoods.
Mhm.
So I think it's been really important, this change from the first moment of Superblock to the second one moment.
Excellent, excellent. It sounds like the top-down approach is going away slowly, and that's excellent. On that same note, Deputy Commissioner Simone, the goals and objectives we are talking about today that Xavi shared focus on prioritizing transit, biking, walking, and making those modes safe and appealing. Historically, however, the transportation sector has not done a good job of having ongoing dialogue with communities throughout the city, learning from residents about their needs and building trust. How is CDOT working to change that now?
Sure. Well, part of it is in the bio that you shared when introducing me, which is that we now have a position that's our Director of Outreach and Engagement. So this is something that we wanted at the department for a while, and we were finally able to get, all the HR stuff worked out so that we could have someone on staff. And so her responsibility is going to be helping us all understand what more we can do, how we can deepen the conversation with communities, how we can hopefully work to get beyond the usual suspects, get beyond the community-based organizations so that we're talking to the residents who live on the block as well. So I think that's one thing. I also think, and that's a big thing, and other city departments have similar types of positions, and we can work together across departments as well to help deepen relationships in communities. We're also looking at expanding our Safe Ambassador program. So they've been helping with the Bike Chicago distribution, for example. They do safety events all over the city, whether that's driving, biking, walking. They do helmet fittings. They do car seat installations for people. We're also working to expand them so that they can be in more communities in the city so that we're learning more. So those are some bigger things. But then there's just smaller things like we have a survey online where people can make recommendations for the types of capital improvements that they'd like to see in their community. So I think we're trying to work it from all angles, the bigger gestures, but also the smaller gestures, and continuing the kind of outreach engagement work that we already do when we have projects that are coming to communities.
Great, great. And this question is really along those lines to both of you. How has Barcelona worked to direct transportation funding to the communities with the greatest needs? I know, Xavi, you mentioned a couple of neighborhoods asking for Superblocks in their neighborhoods. Commissioner Simone, how is Chicago focusing on the communities with greatest needs as it relates to funding? And then Xavi,
Sure.
You can jump in as well.
So as I mentioned, there's a capital plan, Chicago Works, that's been helping us fund local improvements without having to wait for federal and state dollars. And part of what we've done to address the question you're asking, Melvin, about like how are we directing our investments in a different way than we have in the past, we worked with the Center for Neighborhood Technology to develop an index that helps us determine where investments should be made. We call it the Mobility and Economic Hardship Index. It maps out the way you might expect it to map the areas that have higher hardship when it comes to mobility and economics. So the economic data we took from the Chicago Department of Public Health, different measurements of educational attainment, overcrowding in houses, things like that to get at the economic question. And then working with CNT, we added other measurements that are more mobility related, commute times to work, percentage of people with a disability, and I think percentage of income spent on transportation. So those things together create a map, and then we can use that when we're making decisions about where should we make investments in viaduct improvements or sidewalk repairs or new curb and gutter, so that we can prioritize those areas with higher needs. Not that we're going to neglect the rest of the city, but we have decisions to make about where to spend the money first. And so using that index is helping us direct those investments in places that have been overlooked in the past.
Sure, sure. Excellent. Xavi, you mentioned reprioritizing. How do you focus on those areas of greatest needs in Barcelona?
Yeah, this is a metropolitan challenge for us, because if we are looking into the municipality area of Barcelona, we already have a really good mobility system. More than 80% of people with the origin and destination within the city is moving by sustainable transport, media, biking, walking, and public transport. We have a challenge with the metropolitan commuting system. So there is a really complex situation, institutional complex situation, because the municipality is not in charge about the public metropolitan system. So what are we doing is just to pushing different regional government, metropolitan management office in order to improve public transport in the different corridors that connect in the city with different territories when we are detecting that we need more capacity. So the idea is that while we are reducing the room for cars within the city, we also need the capacity of public transport in a metropolitan scale. So right now, what we are doing is monitoring if we have enough public transport offer to invite people to leave the car at home and to take the public transport, and it's working right now. But we also know that in the future, we will need to improve the public transport capacity, and we have more or less detected where it will be true. So, but the City Council of Barcelona has not the responsibility and the capacity to improve this metropolitan system. So the idea is that we need to improve and to work all together with the different levels of the administration in Catalonia and Spain to continue the improvement of the public transport in different territories.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. I think we're running short on time. I think that will wrap up our panel portion of today's event. I will now turn it back over to Audrey to walk us through the polling exercise.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for that great discussion and for those fantastic presentations, Xavi and Jamie. And I am going to just, while we're transitioning over to our next phase, I'm going to drop in a link to the chat. I'm asking everyone who's joined us today to please fill in a survey about your experience on the event today. But the next step in our webinar today is going to be to get some input from residents of Chicago about the transportation element of the We Will Chicago plan. So we are pulling up a Menti input slide deck. Hopefully some of you maybe have seen Menti before. And so what this is going to ask you to do, you can either use your cell phone to do a screenshot of the QR code, and that will take you into it. Or you can go to menti.com, go to that website, please. And then you will enter this 8-digit code, which is 85227579. So we'll take a moment for you to get in there. If you get in there on your cell phone, please check the thumbs up. You see the thumbs up number going up. That'll show us how many people are in there. We also have the link here in the chat, menti.com, and there's the code. Actually, there's one number too many in there. So it's 8522-7579. And we're going to ask you a few questions about the goals and objectives in the transportation element of the We Will plan. In just a moment, you'll be able to give us your feedback about level of agreement with the goals and objectives, and also give us some qualitative feedback. There will be a place for you to actually, write some feedback. So get ready for that. And we'll just give it another few seconds. It looks like we have about 30 of the 68 people online. We have about 31 in the room, so about half of you. So let's get the rest of you in there. And we've just corrected the code in the chat. So it's 8 digits. So if you're having any trouble with that, it's 8522-7579. And in just a moment, we'll shift over to our first slide where you will be able to give us some rankings. So one more time, go to the website menti.com and enter the code to get into this specific survey. It's fun and easy, so please join us. I see the numbers are still going up, so we'll wait a few more seconds to get more people in the room and get your feedback. Also, there are other ways to give feedback on this plan. So the first survey I just put out was about just this event, just how you felt the event was, what was the content of the event. And then this survey link that I just put in here, this is where you can do a survey for the whole We Will plan. So definitely, and that one is closing November 1st. So definitely do that soon. So you can get in before that survey closes. So I think we're just about ready to start the Menti slides. It looks like we have a good amount of people in the room, and you can look in the chat to get back in there if you are not quite in yet. So what we're asking folks to do is to think about goal 1 and tell us how much you agree with goal 1. So today we're focusing on goal 1 and goal 2. So if you can tell us what's your level of agreement with goal 1? And we see people are already responding. We just need one response for you on this slide, and it looks like we have a 4.5-ish, 4.4 or 4.5 out of 5. So that is looking pretty good in terms of agreement. And if for anyone who doesn't feel this goal is feels like there's room for improvement, you'll have an opportunity in a minute to provide comments in terms of additional elements you would want included. So looks like the number is sort of settling down there at 4.3. And this is the goal: ensuring the city's transportation networks and infrastructure systems are safe, equitable, and accessible for all. And we have about a 4.3 on the scale. Okay, I think we can move to the next slide. And now we're talking about the objectives under goal 1. So I'm just going to read through them, and please start thinking about the scores. Again, the scale is 5 is strongly agree, 1 is strongly disagree. So the first objective is ensure transportation and infrastructure systems are equitably distributed, universally accessible, and affordable. So please give us a score for that one. The second one is prioritize infrastructure that reinforces safe movement for all users, regardless of mode, age, ability, or income. So please give us a score for that one. The third one is design and maintain infrastructure that enhances quality of life and pride of place. So please give us a score for that one. The next one is ensure transportation systems support Chicago's world-class airports, O'Hare and Midway. Give us a score for that one. And then the last one is ensure access to high-quality broadband internet across the city. So it looks like there's still a few more folks. Make sure you hit submit at the bottom. I know if you're on your phone, you may not see that submit button. You might need to scroll down. So make sure that after you've given your scores, hit submit so it gets into the system and it shows up on our screen. So we're seeing relatively similar scores for 4 out of the 5. We're seeing a little bit lower score for the transportation systems to the airport. So that's a 3.5 right now. And then we're seeing 4.3s for the equitable distribution, universal accessibility, and affordability. We're seeing a 4.3 for designing and maintaining infrastructure that enhances quality of life and pride of place. And then the highest 2 are for safe movement of all users regardless of mode, age, ability, or income, and ensuring high quality broadband internet is also getting a 4.4. So pretty high for most, a little bit lower for the airports. Let's move on to the next section here. So here you have a chance to type in your own thoughts in an open answer. And those answers are going to appear on the screen. It's not going to say that the answer's from you. They'll all be anonymous. So tell us what you like about this first goal in the infrastructure plan. And you'll have a chance in the second slide to tell us what you don't like. So what do you like about it on this in this slide? We see one comment popping up. We see one person noting that it's good to see an emphasis on affordability and accessibility and focusing on non-car modes of transportation. We also see liking pride of place, those specific words. Folks like that all the areas of Chicago are included. We see a note about safety and beautification. We see a focus on equitable and affordable access. We also see that we like the idea of changing the multimodal transportation model into separate uses, concerned about the neighborhood scale, flexible to support a broad array of programs, inclusive and safety are good things, focus on all users, ages 8 to 80 in the city. That's a concept in transportation. Matching, it's important to match goals with funding that adds equity to underserved areas. There's a multimodal user focus. Another one liking pride of place. The importance of safety and non-car modes. We did see a couple comments about wishing it were more specific. We like that it focuses on older adults and people with disabilities. Prioritizing safety is very well received given horrific traffic fatalities. Liking the infrastructure to enhance quality of life, and like equity and just simply having a comprehensive plan. This is the first time in 50 years Chicago has had a citywide plan. Okay, so let's keep going and we can hear some more. There's another one, disability and accessibility is very important. So on the next slide, you're going to have the chance to talk about what is missing. What are you not seeing that you want to see in this goal and its objectives? What would you change? You can just type in any comments in your words. Someone's observing that we do have a mayoral election coming up, and what could happen if there's a change. There are no clear steps about frequency and coverage of service or specific accessibility features, such as lifts and elevators. This reads like a policy plan, not a comprehensive plan. No metrics or specificity. There's a desire for more detail and strategy regarding safety, a desire for specific direction to plan for children, women, and the elderly. There's an interest in calling out waterways. Someone noted that there's a dire need for affordable housing. Not seeing the connection to areas that need support. How does the index, I think the index that Commissioner Simone, Deputy Commissioner Simone mentioned, the index prioritize selection? How are the positions created to include working daily to share information? Priorities are not set. Climate change is not addressed. Investment in underinvested areas is not prioritized. Movement of goods should be understood about how it interacts with people. And we'll acknowledge that there are other goals that focus a little bit more on freight. And we're focusing on the first two, which are more about people, but valid point. Need to reduce car traffic and lanes. There are no goals about the immediate transit needs of the city. Need to integrate long-term planning, smart design, green infrastructure, flood control measures, and ADA access. The goal is broad and unoffensive to the point where it's almost meaningless. Details are important. We have to understand what we will sacrifice to get there. It does not address the homeless population, water access, green access. Should we not be marketing public transportation, celebrating its use? There are only so many main thoroughfares that impact neighborhoods. And to get people to the jobs and movement of goods, we need collaboration from all city agencies who deal with infrastructure to be on the same page at the same time and giving communities what they need and not what we want to give them. It takes resources, both staff and capital, to achieve these goals. Without sufficient resources, these are just words on paper. Okay, I think it's time to move to the second goal. And we are going to ask the same question. Please tell us the extent to which you agree with the second goal, which is create transportation networks that support greater connectivity by active and sustainable options, walking, public transit, biking, and non-car options. Votes are coming in. So it's hovering around 4.5. We still see some more votes coming in. Looks like about half of people have voted so far that are in the room. Staying at 4.5. Okay, 4.4. Okay, I think we're gonna need to keep going. We'll move on to the next one, and this is where you have the objectives under this goal. So please score each of these 5 objectives. Prioritize expanding public transit in communities with the greatest mobility needs. Prioritize transit that creates connectivity across neighborhoods outside downtown. Integrate and seamlessly connect active and sustainable transportation options such as walking, transit, biking, and riding scooters. Prioritize infrastructure that is aesthetically pleasing and inviting, designing and building spaces that are calm, protected, and safe. And finally, prioritize investments in infrastructure and transit that facilitate walking, transit, and biking. So it looks like 3 are coming out on the high end, on the higher end. So everything, things are hovering just around 4, a little over 4. So yeah, on average, close to 4 for most of these. The highest one, oh, it keeps jumping around. The last one right now is at 4.3, walking, transit, and biking being a priority, and also transit that connects across neighborhoods outside of downtown. And then the other one that's 4.3 is aesthetically pleasing infrastructure. Okay, next is your chance to give qualitative comments. So we're going to move to the next. What do you like about this goal and its objectives? So you can write in some qualitative text about what you like, and then the next slide will be about what is missing. And those are our last 2 slides. Aesthetics, like that, like integration of modes, but there are some challenges with integration of PACE and CTA, like the idea of networks over piecemeal solutions, transit, transit, transit. It seems to include what's really needed, focus on connecting neighborhoods versus downtown, like that, and integration of other modes, like prioritizing walking, biking, and transit, considers the entire city versus the center of business district, like the idea of making the city look and feel better, expanding connectivity outside of downtown, ease of access for all citizens, must balance improvements with loss of use for those with disabilities, considering the human aspect of transit as a focal point, the goals forward thinking, needed and should plan for next generation, and the funding cliff, which is referring to transit funding cliff, I believe, like the emphasis on neighborhoods. All right, we're going to do our next slide, our last slide. We have just a minute left. And all this, even if you type in after we've changed slides, we are capturing your information. So feel free to continue to type in. And then tell us now what is missing from this goal and objectives. What would you like to add? What do you feel is missing? And then I'm also just putting into the Q&A, you will be able to see this video and other videos at wewillchicago.com calendar page, which is where all the other videos are stored too. Okay, what's missing? What guarantees that this program will continue until completed? True forward thinking is missing, longer range planning that includes financing. Would change maintenance and evolution of existing transportation structures. It takes resources to achieve these goals. Without resources, these are words on paper. There are no real steps or numbers or metrics. What are the steps towards achieving this? What happened to the 600 plus policy ideas? City department collaboration is missing, and DFSS and aging. Sustainability is missing, parking policies are missing, action items, resources, funding, short to medium term improvements. So many of these seem like a rewording of the same thing, missing metrics that influence three-dimensional adjustment of variables. The goal is too broad. Marketing, it's missing marketing of biking and walking. People don't know how great these options are. Okay, a lot of great feedback, and we are at the end of our time here. So we would just like to thank all the speakers and everyone for joining us today. Want to give you one more reminder that we'd love your feedback on this event, the whole event. One more time, there's the survey link for that. And then if you would like to give additional input beyond what you put into the Menti today, you can do so at the We Will website through the formal survey, but do it fairly soon. You have until next Tuesday to fill that out, and then it will close. So thank you very much to Xavi, to Jamie, and to Melvin for moderating this session, and for everyone that attended and joined us today. It's been a great conversation, and have a great afternoon.